Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Bro. I'll be presenting our topic of today, which is tips and best practices for implementing project manager oversight in OpenAir. So what are we talking about today when we talk about project management oversight? What we really mean by that is, how are my projects going and how do I know when they're not going well versus how do I know when they're going well? What are some of the things OpenAir can help me be able to communicate to me? The status of my project, any project issues that are happening, project successes. So what we're going to cover today is a number of different ways you can set OpenAir up to kind of communicate those project statuses. And the whole goal here is, can you be proactive with trying to find any potential problems, but before they become bigger problems. And so, and that's as project managers, that's what we do. We're constantly looking for any sort of signs of trouble so that we can dig into those trouble items and get those solved before it impacts the project. So for today, we're going to talk about some of the things that we can see in standard alerts inside of OpenAir. I'm going to highlight the newsfeed collaboration option. It's a little used feature, so I want to kind of just do a reminder that it's available and how we see some customers utilizing it, some of the pros and cons. We'll get into some custom dashboards and some of the reports that we see that could be really useful for identifying project health. And then also there's another newer feature in the last couple of years called custom tag fields. And I'll walk you through what those look like. And again, what are some of the pros and cons with using those. So generally where I go to start when I'm looking to get a kind of a very 50,000 foot view of my projects is I'll go into my project list view. Project list view is the most basic of basic views in OpenAir. You can go in, you can filter on all your projects in a certain stage, and here you can filter by project owner, my projects, depending on what level of access you have. And here you can kind of quickly see what's happening in the project. If you're using OpenAir to manage your planned hours and then comparing that to your worked hours and approved hours and how many hours have been billed, all of that is great KPI metrics that you can use to identify where we are in this project. OpenAir will have out-of-the-box percent complete count based on the setup of the project. And that also tells a story and answers a question. Are we 8% through this project, or are we not 8% through this project? And where should we be according to where the project plan had us at this point in time? So all these data points, can be used in conjunction with each other and allows you to kind of tell a story as to where are we today with this project. So this is one of many ways that I go in and I quickly be able to get a sense of where we are within a particular project or a grouping of projects. I've also included the news feed as a column in this view here, and we'll talk about that in the next slide or two, about how we see customers using that and what that translates to when it comes to visibility in the list view. However, the list view is great, but it's going to give you very, overall project, not down to more granular detail, like, for example, at a task level, how are we doing project-wise? So as drilling into the outline view, you can then get a little more granular detail about what parts of the project are going well versus what parts of the project might need help. Depending on how you set your system up, there's a lot of different configuration options within OpenAir. You can, if you're setting up planned hours at a task level and then tracking against that, or if you're doing planned hours at a resource level, at the assignment level, there's also, you can do booking hours at a task or a project as well. So there's a lot of different function. This screenshot here is showing assigned hours per person per task. And so I can see, for example, Marie Porter had 2 hours assigned to review the SOW. She's now spent 5.5 hours. So that may or may not be okay. The question I always ask is, are we done? Is 5.5 done, or are we still working on it? And it doesn't really answer that question here. And so, this tells a story. It doesn't tell the complete story. So there's, again, some options here you can do. There's a feature in OpenAir called estimated at completion, estimated to completion. And, Marie can say, yes, I'm done. My 550 is now correct. And now I planned hours was 2, but now I have another column for my estimated hours, which is 5.5, and the approved 5.5, and I'm 100% complete. And if that's enabled and that's visible here, now I know, we did go over, but we are complete with regards to our activities for that particular task. There's also the baselining option that you can use, which can be also very helpful. And for customers that don't want to go to manage resources down to a task level for an hours perspective, they really are more interested in this task has X amount of hours, and how are we doing against those hours across all the folks that are working on those tasks. And that's really where a baseline, I think, can come in really handy, because you could have sold the task for 12 hours, and then you want to take a baseline at the beginning of the project, say, okay, where are we? And then as you're working those tasks, you may want to up the planned hours to meet what your expectation of actually is. So you may want to, for the planned deployment here, we sold 12 hours, we were way over at 48. So I could update my planned hours to 48, or whatever the number is I think I'm going to be at, and then track my hours there. You have to then determine, is this going to impact the rest of the project? Obviously, where are we with regards to budget? Are we going to be able to make up hours in other sections of the project? So this project's not off to a very good start, in my opinion. It's got some challenges. Obviously, it's test data in our demo environment, but that this would be a project I would be a little concerned about, especially right out of the gate. You'll see here, you can also see your project progress, how OpenAir is calculating the % complete using the planned hours and the approved hours. And also you can see what the last project status was. And again, this is using the feature that we'll talk about in the next couple slides. And there's some other columns you can enable that could help within the outline view. And it's also important to make sure you've got the latest and greatest, all the UI fields turned on, switches turned on, and make sure you're looking at the latest UI. You can also add gap hours in as a field. And this is a very simple calculation. If I'm managing my project from planned hours and want to compare what's been done versus how many hours have been planned, the gap hours is a great option, because here I can quickly look at my gap column and I can see quickly which project or which resource is over budget and which resources are not over budget. So seeing the fact that Jody is spent over 3.75 hours over her allocated hours is quickly visible here in this view. As I mentioned, the news feed, I think, came out in 2020, so it's been around a couple of years now. I don't see a lot of customers using it, and there's some reasons for that. It does allow you to basically, it's not a chat, it's more of like, I can put notes on the project that are time stamped, and within each note, you can assign a status. So, and as you assign new statuses, what happens in the list views and the outline views, you will see the latest status. So, for example, this project is marked as on track with a note of status update. If you come back in and put in a new status, and then each is a separate record, you're not overriding anything, and you can see the history here. You could put in a new status that says this project needs attention, maybe it's behind or off to not so good of a start. And then as I'm looking as a portfolio manager or PMO, so I'm looking across projects, I can say, oh, there's this project we need to dig into a little bit, because I can see quickly that there's some needs attention flag that's flown, and I can quickly dig into the notes to see what notes are behind the scenes here. So from that perspective, it's really nice, because you get those consolidated notes that you can then review. Where I think the newsfeed needs to go next and where it falls short, in my opinion, is the ability to report on it. There's no report in OpenAir today where you can include newsfeed as a record. And that's unfortunate because I think there's some real benefit to using this feature, but I think being able to export it out, I think, is a critical miss that hopefully OpenAir will fill at some point. But that being said, we've also had customers that say, hey, can we use this to trigger alerts when a new newsfeed object is created? And the answer is yes. So we've worked with other customers that said we want to kind of interface any alerts where a PM goes in and updates the status here and send that to Slack to a certain team or certain resource and be able to alert someone that, hey, there's a project that needs attention. And so that's another option of using this and then interfacing it with Slack. You could also interface it with the email potentially as well to be able to send an email through the scripting engine when a new status is sent. So those are next level alerts that we can put in place to make this a little more usable. So you're not trying to dig out the notes by going project by project and really being able to get those proactively sent to you. So if you're interested in that sort of communication, you feel free to contact us and we'll be happy to talk to you about that. This is something we do today at TopStep. See a lot of customers adopting this. And for certain types of projects of ours, we require that these custom fields be managed by our project managers. And so what we do is we kind of break out the different statuses, red, yellow, green, into different categorizations and custom fields. And so in this screenshot, we can see that we're basically evaluating how's our schedule, how's our scope, how's our budget, how's our resource status. And we can come in through and say our budget's red, but we're green everywhere else. Our scope is yellow. And then we require a current status note. So as the PM goes in here once a week, they update his health summary. They go in, they add a status, and they hit save. And now I can run reports every Monday morning looking for any new projects, any new project statuses, and review the latest set of notes that were entered by the project manager. And now I've got information that I need so I can go in and take action if I need to. And that's really what this is all about, is giving you information that's for you to go take action. Now, we have a script that basically wipes out this current status and stores them in another custom text area field. You'll see there's a historical risk notes. So that way it's blank. Each week, our PMs go in and they put in new status. It gets wiped out, stored in the historical notes. So not only can I see what the latest status is, but I can also see what the history of the status here. Again, this is all just using custom fields, form permissions, and a script that moves the current status to the historical. So we find this really effective way for TopStep to be able to keep on top of our larger projects and make sure we're monitoring our budgets. If you're looking for something a little more robust, if you're looking for really powerful, complicated cost budget management, there is this concept of a project budget, right? OpenAir's got several different budgeting options within the product. You've got a basically just out-of-the-box budget that just basically gives you one single budget number that you can just change as needed. Then you've got a transactional budget, which gives you a little more flexibility to be able to create new budgets as net new objects, so you can kind of see where budgets changed. And again, these are budgets at a invoicing rev rec level. This is budgets of dollars that were sold to the customer. These budgets, this project budget is really meant to be more of a cost budget. So we have a cost of delivering this project. We expect our resources to be able to enter, they're going to be entering their time, and we're going to have expenses, and we have third-party purchases. We can plan all of that out. And then what we can see is how are we doing each month with regards to what we thought we were going to get from a planned hours. And the planned hours can be fed by a project plan. It can be fed by bookings. The cost is obviously being fed by a user assigned cost on the user record. And so this basically cost budget, it does give you that ability to go month over month versus just saying, how are we doing? It's like, what months did we go under where we expected to be? Which months are we over where we expected to be? And then overall, where are we? And we can look at this from a dollars perspective. You can also look at this as an hours perspective as well. So again, it does what it needs to do. It is quite setup heavy. And so, it's one of those features we really tell customers we really need to evaluate it and test it and make sure there's no other way to get what you're trying to get to, because it is a little setup heavy and administratively heavy as well. But it is an option if you have this type of requirement. We often get asked, how do we get an alert when our budget's reaching a certain percentage? There is an out-of-the-box budget alert, and it does give you some limited alerting. Unfortunately, there are some limitations. It's looking at approved hours only to generate, because that's how percent completes are calculated in OpenAir. And by then, maybe it's been approved, it might be too late, or you may want to see it, the alerts done a little differently. And so we've done some custom alerts through the system where we were able to basically generate emails, Slack alerts as well, where we can say, we can even do visual alerts as pop-ups within the project. So there's a lot of options creative solutions we've come up with to try to solve for a more robust alerting around budgets. And so, again, there is this out of the box. It may work for most folks. For those that don't, and they're still looking for a little more proactive, we could certainly help there. I mean, obviously, you can also use reports as alerts by being able to generate these scheduled reports to be able to see the details. But again, it's going to give you everything, not just projects that meet certain criteria. And so that's where the alerts and the custom alerts become more effective. Some of the key reports that we see customers using is, where you're looking at, when you're using assigned hours or planned hours, you're looking at booked hours. Then obviously you want to look at your timesheet hours if that's your critical driver or where we are. And then how do I know if my timesheet hours and my assigned hours and booked hours, how do I know where I am in the project? So one thing we see is, this report here, it's looking at a project and a user. It's summarizing the hours per user across all those different categories. There's a category called booked hours with actuals. And so what this gives you is, based on actual hours plus booked hours in the future, where do we think this resource is going to be with regards to their budget? So in this example, Beth Castle's budget is 512 hours. Between her time entered and her future booking, she's going to land around 431 hours. So she's under budget. So that tells me she's over, she's really efficient and done a great job. Or we've got some scheduling issues we need to deal with where she's not scheduled for some hours into the future that we need to look at. So again, this tells a story. It answers a question, gives you a direction to start digging to see where we are with regards to the project and our resourcing. So this is really heavily towards our, where are we going to end up at the end of the project by resource. You could take this same report and add task. You can add a task with the user, so you can expand this report to get a little more granular down to the task detail as well to give you some of those same indicators. With that report I just showed you, what that report is doing is it's looking at the past, right? We have to pull all the time. So we want to say inception to date, meaning from the beginning of the project through the latest timesheet capture. But we also need to pull in the future because we need to be able to see all the future schedules or bookings to be able to get a complete view of the data. And so to do that, the way that we set this report up is we did a yearly inception to date time period starting next year, ending next year. So depending on how far out your bookings go, in this example, it assumes your bookings are not beyond next year. This would give us all of the inception to date from the beginning of the project through the last time entry, and then all the bookings going forward to be able to give us that one consolidated view of both past and future melted together. You could also do, how are we doing just year to date, your IT date through today? So this would be more of how we're doing for the past versus not including the future. And again, these can be report time features, but you can also do these at a custom calc level as well. So some of these can be set at a calc level that will give you kind of that ability to look at that. And then obviously trending reports, you want to see, for the last 13 weeks, starting ending last quarter, how would we do? So obviously all these reports have tell different stories, they answer different questions. But depending on what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to do, any of these could be very beneficial in how you design your reports. If you're using costs in OpenAir, which we see more and more customers putting costs in, everyone has a little different calculation of how they calculate their costs, but there's a lot of value in having costs in OpenAir. And the biggest value, obviously, is approximating the margin of the project. And that's another really good indicator on where are we going to be. And here you can use custom calcs and date filters within the custom calcs to determine different margin approximations. So in this example for the business consulting, we can see that as of today, we're at 43.75% margin. Okay, and so that's using a custom calc with a date filter and as of today. At the end of the project, based on where we expect to be, we're going to be at 37.61% margin. So again, margin indicator could be a really good indicator of how are we doing or what we sold, what was our expected margin for the project versus where are we. Again, it's usually just an approximation of margin because depending on how your payroll or how your user costs are computed. But it does give you enough information to be able, again, to say, where are we? Are we healthy? Are we in trouble? Do we need to adjust? Or do we need to take action within a project, within a customer? So margin's another good KPI that we see a lot of customers benefiting from to help them run their projects. And then all these reports that we've just taken a look at are all obviously graphical, can be changed into graphical views. So creating dashboards is a great way to, I log in, first thing in the morning I do is I look at my dashboards and see how we doing. They're based on reports, they're nightly refreshed. So I can see, how we doing. And dashboards really give you if you're looking for trends, dashboard to me is the best option for trending, giving you that compare approved hours versus booked hours or my plan versus actuals. Those are all, great trending reports that you can get and be able to kind of identify where you might have some trouble. But in addition to graphs, what I also really enjoy is being able to just create reports on my dashboard. Keeps me from having to go run the report. I know it's refreshed as of the last evening, and I can come in here and just take a quick look at my dashboard reports. This could replicate a list view in OpenAir. If you're using issues to track different project issues, that's another option for being able to have a nice view. If you're using issues, there's these concept of custom tags that you can set up, and we'll talk about those in the next slide. Those are a newer feature, again, I think 2020 as well. But you can then now see, you can create different, think about the red, yellow, green that I showed you on the project status, on the project properties using custom fields. What risk tag does is allow you to basically replicate those similar fields, but now you get that punch of color, and it really kind of calls out, it needs attention, at risk, and really gives you that call to action to do so. So status reports, And the other thing really nice about these is, I don't know, you can quickly filter by just typing into the blank boxes above each column. So if I wanted to come in here and quickly say, show me everything Pied Piper, I could just come in here and type Pied Piper. All my Pied Piper projects would show up, and I could quickly just see those projects. And then I can just delete my text, and it goes back to my full list. So I've got another benefit of these dashboard reports. A lot easier to filter on the fly versus having to filter within a standard report. So speaking of custom tags, what basically this is a combination of using a custom type of custom field and hex color codes, similar to what you'll see like in the resource, some of the resource views where you have different colors you can control. You can use those same color codes to be able to color code so in this example, right, we've got some field levels, insignificant, low, medium, and high. And then what I'm doing is within each one of those, I'm setting a hex code to say what color is going to show up. And in this example, we have a new value called extreme, and then we have a hex code that we're going to set as those. Again, these show up really nicely in views and in different reports. What they are not is filterable. So they do not work like a standard drop-down field in OpenAir, where you can add them to a report filter and be able to filter that report. So it's unfortunate you can't treat them the same way. So if you're looking to filter by show me all my projects at risk, that's one of these tags is not able to do that. So you kind of have to balance the benefit of the tags versus the downside of how are you going to use them, and do you need to be able to use them as filterable objects. This is from the release notes that OpenAir released on how to set these up. I think that you can also find this on Suite Answers. So in summary today, there's a mix of standard data views that you can get: budget and project management, task management. Those are generally my go-to to kind of get a quick idea of what action or where are we with certain projects. Obviously, reports can give you a more drill down, tells a different story, and be able to give you more information about where you are trending, where you are looking forward, not just where we are today. And those are all important concepts in making sure your project is in a good place. Being able to take that report data, being able to generate graphical views. I'm very graphical. I like pretty pictures. And so those are impactful for me as I can take a quick look at those and identify where I need to take action. And then, proactively messaging. People get numb to email today, I think. So if you're using a Slack or some other messaging service, we've even cracked the code recently on texting. We're working with a customer to provide texting alerts for overdue timesheets. So we've able to figure that out using the scripting engine as well. So there's a lot of different alerts that we can work with you on using the scripting solutions, and putting those in place to help give people the right information at the right time and get them to be proactive. And I will say it again, a good project manager is about being proactive. It's about anticipating challenges, knowing where the bodies are buried, being able to react before it impacts the project, before it impacts your customer. I tell my guys, it's okay we make mistakes. It's okay if there's issues. It's not okay if that issue bubbles into a customer satisfaction issue. And that's where we try to be proactive and cut those off before they become customer issues. So again, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your loyalty and following of TopStep. If you want to learn more, we have a ton of content like this on our website. We have TopStep tweets. We do tips each week if you're interested in following us as well.